Welcome to episode 17. This one I'm talking about decision making. This is the second pillar and the second part of my five-part leadership conversation. If you haven't seen 16, the previous one, I would suggest go back and see it because it does lay a platform. But let's just move ahead straight away. So the most important thing about decision making, what I've learned, like I'm going to be talking about this as I covered in the last one. I'm talking about it from the perspective of being a leader, being a manager, being a supervisor, and being a worker. I've been all of those things. I am currently all those things in different organizations. And I'm not going to be talking only about the things I've learned through trial and error and through training and coaching. I'm also going to be talking about what I just observed. Everyone's good for something if it's being a bad example. So let's get started. And I learned this, that when it comes to decision making, the most important thing is you must never violate this, otherwise you risk the success of everyone, is all decisions must be for the betterment of a team, and they must align with the vision and the values you guys as a team have decided on, and therefore its goals. So I'm looking at my super technologically advanced notes that I've written here about this. And so in order to discuss that, let's move on to the first of 4 points that I've got this. First of all, we have to recognize no one has all the answers. It doesn't matter how good a leader you are, no one has all the answers because no one can think of everything and no one's experienced everything. And it's important to rely on your most trusted team members sometimes to come to a decision. Why is this important? The first thing is it shows humility. We all prefer to be following someone who's competent and humble than competent and arrogant. And the next thing is it's just the truth. So why pretend otherwise? One of the positives it does bring, though, is recognition within a team. I remember one of the first times that my boss came up to me and said he had a problem, and he's like, how would you tackle this, Nicholas? I thought, wow. And I told him my opinion on it, and he said, that actually sounds pretty good. How about you take the point on this one and see how you go? And so he gave me that opportunity, he gave me that responsibility, and it gave me an opportunity to grow, to learn how to come up with an idea and get people around me to buy in. It was a really good succession planning exercise for me. It raises the morale of the team. It's another positive that not only the person you're recognizing, but other people in the team will see how, if they're doing a good job, how they will be treated, that they will be treated with respect, treated with appreciation, which is a good standard to set within your organization, and you can do that as a leader. And not only that, if you are the leader within your organization, you probably have other departments or sub-departments that you can go to, and by you talking to the leaders of those departments, it actually gives them permission to do it within their department. They can go to other people they respect and ask them what they think about a situation, which creates really good teamwork and team building, but it also exposes you to new ideas. I don't care if you're the smartest person in the room, you're not as smart as everyone put together. And some people who are doing very specific tasks are probably going to be the best in your organization at doing those tasks because that's what they do, and they do it very well. So they probably give you some pointers, some tips about things that you may have not considered yet, and that's really what you're looking for when you're trying to come to get all the information. Is you want the correct facts, and you want all the information that you can get that's relevant and real, and those people can give you that. And so how do I do that? Well, the first thing I do, and I've learned to do this, is truly know where you are as a leader. Like, be honest with yourself. If you've got holes in your game, then align yourself with people who you think are strong in those areas. You may not be maybe the best communicator, well then spend more time with some of the people in your organization who you think are good communicators. And one of the things that a leader should be doing is setting the example, and so that means you always want to grow. Well, if you are, the complete product, the finished product, you've got nowhere left to grow. And let's be honest, no one's the finished product. No one is. So we have to be honest and say, in order to grow, we need to learn, and that means we have to admit that there are things that we don't know. This is an important step. Next is, if you're going to talk to people, you want to be talking to the people who have deserved most of the right to do so, and they're going to be the people who are the best in your organization at doing that. So identify the people with the highest skill set and the highest potential and leadership potential as well, not just the skill potential, because what you're going to be doing in these conversations is trying to identify the people that are going to be part of your succession planning. which is a very big part, and the responsibility of a leader is succession planning. Now, I would suggest that this is what I want to do anyway. When having these conversations, first of all, when I need to make a decision and I don't have all the answers, I go around and have one-on-one conversations. Why do I do this? It's because sometimes when you're in a group of people, particularly a large group, most people will go along with the consensus of the group, which means you're not going to get any opposing points of view. You may, but you also may be missing out on some. So eliminate that by, first of all, just having one-on-one conversations with people for two reasons. One, it gives an opportunity for them to speak their mind truly, but also what it does is, by having the one-on-one before the group talk, all of us have been in a situation where someone came to us, started up a conversation, and after the conversation we're like, oh, I should have said that, right? This is where you're giving the person an opportunity. You're giving them a chance to have the conversation, go away, think about what they could have said, and then when you have the group conversation, then they can put their best foot forward and tell you, the thing that they really wanted to tell you in the first place, which is it's very good feeding information because you want it all. So have the one-on-one followed by the group. Now, if you have the group, one of the simple blueprints that I learned from someone else on what to do is, in a group situation, what you want to be doing is simply stating what the challenge is, and then let everyone speak. Let everyone speak first, and then if you're the leader, speak last. Allows everyone to feel heard, allows everyone to feel understood, and it also allows you as a leader to make a decision, or at least say what the next step is going to be, and concluding on that, which is good for building the momentum. Ask questions to your team as well in these situations. Sometimes people will say things that is actually honestly hearsay. I've seen it so often. They heard something through the grapevine. And as a leader, you can sometimes nip a lot of these like gossip or rumors in the bud. But when someone says something, ask the question and be like, are you sure about that? Oh, I heard such and such say it last week. Well, that's not really credible, is it? So it really allows you, in a very open and honest and transparent environment, to address some of the things that are not true and that may be distracting from the job at hand. And it'll also allow everyone to be able to give their opinion and give you some ideas to work with, so you can go away and make your decision. And also, it's very important to follow up on this. That until you've made your decision, I would suggest coming back to people and following up on what the progress is on whatever it is that they're working on, so you are most likely informed. Moving on to the next point. About decision making. So one of the facts I've learned through being a leader and observing leaders is nobody respects a leader that has difficulty making decisions. Why? Well, if a leader is unsure and that they're lacking in confidence, well, confidence should be an indicator of competence. And if someone doesn't have confidence, it might mean that they're not good at what they do. You're not going to really believe in someone who you think is not good at what they do. And it really shows that they're unsure of either of the objective or the means to solve the problems to meet that objective. And it also might show that not only do they not have confidence in themselves, they might not have confidence in the team members that they have to accomplish the goal. So what that really comes down to is it generally shows weakness, and no one likes getting behind a weak leader. So if the leader doesn't trust themselves, how can they possibly trust us? And are they able to see the big picture? Because if you understand the vision that the group is getting behind, then you should know what direction to go in, right? So there's a lot of questions there, and also it might be a case of the person's actually not fit for the role. And when the group feels like the person in the leadership role is unworthy to be there, it really undermines their authority and the respect of the person as in the role, not as a human being, but in the role. And then it puts doubt over every decision they make moving forward, because we can't trust it, because they don't even believe in themselves. It's very important. Like if we see a leader and they're not doing the most expedient thing, so they're not doing the most important or the most urgent. One good example I heard was, it's like straightening deck chairs on the Titanic. And I've been in situations like that where we've had a leader and they're telling us what we need to do, and I thought, this is not the most important thing. Like we might have some really important, like financial or an audit coming up, and they're talking about something about that has very little bearing on anything that we're going to be doing. And so yeah, make sure that whatever decisions that you're coming to, make sure they're the most important or most urgent. There are different being important and urgent. Um, but yeah, first things first. That's very important to make sure that you, when I've made decisions anyway. Now, how do we do this? The first thing I've done is I've given myself a reasonable amount of time to come to a decision. I don't need to have all the answers. I might ask someone, how long do you think? But I'll just say to myself, okay, I should be able to make a decision with this within 3 days or 5 days or 10 days, whatever it is. I pick a time frame and I think that is a reasonable amount of time. What do I mean by reasonable? You've got to give yourself enough time to gather all the facts, but not so long that the problem is persistent and doing damage. You don't want to, ready, fire, aim either. Take enough time to get the facts and then make the decision. So, and that also puts a deadline on it, which will expedite the process more because it'll give you a sense of urgency to get this done. And that's what your team is looking for you to do, to be urgent in things that are important to deal with. Use that time to gather as many verifiable facts. Make sure it's facts, not just opinions, because what I've learned is facts is where the truth is, and feelings are where your bias is. And all of us have biases. Well, let's be honest, all of us are biased to ourselves, right? So you want to be holding on to his facts and getting his facts as much as possible, and make sure that whatever the decision is, it aligns with the vision. It, like going back to the beginning, it must serve the vision. So calculate these facts. You're going to do a bit of maths. And talk to your leadership team and taking the facts, taking the figures, taking the opinions, and also accept there are going to be consequences and there's going to be a sacrifice for what you're doing. Like anything we do in life, there is something we have to give up in order to do it. If you're here, that means you're not somewhere else. That's just the reality of the situation. Identify what the possible consequences are going to be for taking this action. It allows you to do a few very positive things. The first thing it allows you to do is to make a plan to eliminate that consequence if it's a negative one, or at least mitigate it. Because if we take this course of action, then this other thing will happen, you can put something in place to stop that or mitigate it. That's going to look very good to your team when it happens. Because when you do act it out and it does happen, they go, look, this thing happens. You go, yes, we know, we talked about it, and this is what we said, how we're going to deal with it, right? Puts great level of confidence in your ability to lead, because you're doing the thing that people are expecting of you. Another thing it allows you to do is to eliminate the naysayers. So there might be someone in the team, because I've observed this, when you're going to make a decision, they sort of sit back and go like, it'll never work. And then, so when you make the decision, even if it's overall, it's a net positive, if there's any negative things that come out of it, they sort of point to that and go, see, I told you it wasn't going to be a good idea because this negative thing happened. If you can identify it beforehand and have a conversation about it and come up with a plan, when it happens, they have no ground to stand on anymore, because yes, you knew it knowingly, and not only did you identify it, you put a plan in place to mitigate or eliminate it and allow the team to move forward successfully. The next thing you want to do is, after you acknowledge the sacrifice you're going to have to make the decision. Just make it. This is a point I've noticed leaders as balk at. They get to that point of enacting it and then suddenly have some doubts. Once you've got all the facts and figures, once you've got everyone's opinion and you know what you need to do, you've got to do it. Now, once you've done it, this is what I've learned. Now, I remember Jim Maxwell talked about this a lot, and I totally agree with him on this. He said that once you've figured out what you need to do and you've made a decision, he said, be quick to make your decision, but slow in making changes. And when I first read this, I didn't, it's not that I didn't understand, but I thought you can interpret that a couple different ways. But this is how I've come to see it. Imagine you're on a ship. And the reason I use this example is because it's going to come up later on. Imagine you're on a ship and you need to get to a destination. Well, what you would do is you would identify the general direction you need to go, making sure you don't run into anything. And once you've got clear open sea, you would head in that direction. Now, it's not going to be 100% accurate to get you exactly where you need to be. along the way, you're going to need to make micro adjustments to the course, to the heading, until you will eventually, with enough micro connections, arrive exactly where you need to be. And I felt like that analogy was a better way for me to understand it, is pick the general direction that you need to go, the general decision, like this is going to move us towards our vision, and go for it. And then as you go, adapt and make micro decisions if necessary, probably will be. Now, the real power is this, as you, because when you start, you probably start off tentatively and start slowly. And as you start making progress, it's going to build confidence. That confidence is going to lead to momentum. That momentum is going to lead to greater amounts of success with the same amount of energy. Like when a locomotive starts, it puts a lot of energy but goes very, very short distance, right? But as it builds momentum, it covers greater and greater distance exponentially. And that's really where the power comes from. Next thing is be transparent with your decision making. This is the what. Be transparent with decisions and also the motivations for the decisions. Why? Well, the first thing is it builds trust. It builds trust that people can see that your motivations for making the decision is in alignment with the value and the success of the group. And it also shows respect. Instead of people just having a decision forced upon them, they're allowed to understand beforehand, and also it allows them to make changes to their circumstances if need be. It also indicates a we mentality over a me mentality, because you're leading by example. Even though it's you, the decision is yours to make, you are including everyone in the discussion. And it also allows you the opportunity for people to give you some input that might simply be something that you didn't think of. That if you actually talk to the group, well, this is our challenge and this is what we're thinking of doing, someone may have gone through the exact same thing previously. And that's the value of experience, or even in another company, so none of you have like a history of it, and they can say, well, we faced the same thing 2 years ago in this company, this is how we dealt with it. Fantastic. You don't get that opportunity if you don't inform the people. The next thing is it allows team to understand their progress. So if you do have a vision and you are moving towards it and you are living it, and now you need to make an adjustment, you could at least inform them, well, this is the progress we've made towards that success. And this is where we are, but now we need to make a change due to some event. We're not going to get into that. The specifics are unimportant, but it allows them to know where you are in your progress. Is it working or is it not working? But also it allows you to address any misinformation that's going on. I remember I was in an FMG quarterly meeting. FMG is a mining company for anyone who doesn't know. And the manager, he had to deal with some truck drivers that they believed that the autonomous trucks, they had autonomous trucks and human-driven trucks at the same time operating. And the human drivers were of the opinion that the autonomous trucks were way less efficient than the humans, because what would happen is if any vehicle gets within 5 meters of the dump truck, the truck automatically stops and it will not start until a human being goes out to the location and restarts it. And so they would drive past these stalled trucks and be like, I'll see another truck not moving. Well, this manager, he had his finger on the pulse. He knew they were having these discussions, and so he came prepared. He had all his receipts ready, and he had a spreadsheet. He was able to show them categorically that the autonomous trucks were outperforming the human drivers by almost 2 to 1 in terms of ore taken from point A to point B. And then he also followed up saying that's not even taking into consideration, annual leave, sick days, R&R, etc. That was, sleep. They don't need to sleep. They're autonomous trucks. He was just taking into time of actual work hours, and they were being outperformed. When he calculated all the other stuff, it was like 4 times as much delivery. And there was, before those facts were shared with this group, there was this, you could feel it in the voices of the truck drivers. There was this animosity, there was this resentment towards management that they were being replaced unfairly. And then when the facts were actually presented, it allowed the group to understand, to come to terms with it. Maybe some people stayed angry, but it did allow the opportunity, because the decision had been made public, it allowed the leadership team to actually address some of the misinformation that was going on. And now to the how we do it. So yes, as I said, have your finger on the pulse. What does that mean? You need to have good rapport with your managers, with your supervisors, and with your team members. And if you're a manager, supervisor, team, your leader should have good rapport with you. Like, you should be able to talk to them all the time about things. It builds trust. To address this, yeah, and also, what I'll say is this: from the perspective of, if you're going to your leadership team with a problem, what I would suggest as a worker or a manager or a supervisor, keep it concise and stay to the facts. If it's the first time you're raising this, or the second time, don't need to tell a story about it. Just state your business factually. State what the issue is that you would like resolved, and then leave it with them. Now, going back on the other side to the leadership group, if someone does come to you with a problem, take notes. Take notes on it, record it, because don't, as I heard someone famously say, don't use your mind as a filing cabinet. It was Jim Rohn that said that. Take notes, whether you have to write it down or put a message in your phone, save it, because you will forget, especially if you're a leader, if you're coming through a department, you might have 10 people come up to you with a problem. You've probably forgotten the first one by the time you get to the third or fourth problem. Write them down, take a note of it, who it was and what the issues were, and always let them know you'll get back to them. All right? Now, I would suggest, in my experience, 3 to 7 days is an acceptable time to get back to them. And if you don't have an update after 7 days, at least get back to them saying, I haven't forgotten. It is important to me, and I am still looking into it. Now, also, if it turns out that it's like really low on the totem pole of priorities, we'll get back to them and say, look, this is something that is important to me, but right now I'm going to have to deal with A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Let's deal with this big one. Once I knock a few of these off, I'm going to put my attention onto this issue here, and then have it written down somewhere, maybe on a board in your office or something, so you can actually get back to the people and get back to it. It fills a team up with great confidence if you come to them and say, look, I haven't forgotten, it is important to me, and I will get back to you, and then you get on with solving problems, and then like a month later or 2 months later, because you've got it written up on your office, right? You haven't forgotten, it's right there, you see it every day, and then you have some time, you're like, you know what, I can deal with this now. And then you come back to that person 2 months later and say, you remember that problem? Right, this is what we're going to do. And they're like, oh my God, they didn't actually forget. That's a real opportunity as a leader for you to show that they are your priority and the success of the team is your priority. Now, moving on to the last step. Once a team-centric decision has been agreed upon, and it is decided that this is the way forward, everyone must get behind it, and as a leader you must communicate that. Like the old saying goes, if you're not part of the solution, you are part of the problem. Because what I've noticed is this: when you have someone who's not on board or has shown an unwillingness to get behind the group, they don't just not chip in, they actually create such a problem within the group that you have to go back and fix things they're doing. It's imagine it like this. Imagine you've got a whole group of people, like 10 people of a group pulling a rope. They're not just not pulling the rope, they're pulling in the opposite direction, which creates fatigue, creates resentment, creates animosity. It kills productivity, it lowers morale, and it stops people doing what they should be doing. What they should be doing is coming to work every day and moving the organization, the team, closer towards that vision. And if they're having to fight someone within the group just to be able to start work, or be constantly looking over their shoulder because they're worried about being sabotaged by someone who wants to prove that it's not going to work, something like that, they're not being able to do their job. And it is your job as the leader to address this. It is very frustrating as a team that's trying to succeed to have someone in the group that's holding you back, and the leader or leadership team know about it and do nothing. They just let that problem persist and persist. Eventually, you will throw your hands up in the air and say, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. Whether that means that you give up on the dream or you change companies, you're going to drive out the good people and keep the ones who are going to be troublemakers. So it's very important. Also, try to think, so I'm getting on to the how to do this now. Always think win-win. And Stephen Covey talks about this, that there's 4 kinds of outcome in a situation. There's lose-lose, where obviously you and they lose. There's lose-win, I win but you lose. a win-lose the other way around. I lose, but you win, and then there's win-win. We both win. I'm going to give you a quick example. I used to work with a chef from Switzerland, Swiss French he was, and he worked in a hotel, and he worked 5 days, and then on his 2 days off, someone would come in and cover for him. And so what he used to do on his last day is he would fill up his fridges with prep so that the chef coming in would be ready for the day, because that's how he operated every day. But what happened was this chef would, when on his last day, he would just let all the prep run out so that when the original chef would return, everything was empty, and then he would have to bust his ass to try to get it back. Well, after this happened a couple of times, he went to the chef de partie, which is like the leader of the section, and explained the situation, right? That it's not fair, etc. And so the chef de partie said, okay, I'll do something about it. But all he did was he just had a word to her about it and then left it at that. That's very poor leadership. It's up to you to follow up with things like this. And so what happened was she did it a third time. Now, this is something that leaders need to understand. If a team member has come to you with a problem and you don't solve that problem or at least take action on it, they're going to take matters into their own hands. And very rarely is it going to be a good outcome for anyone. Because what they're going to want justice, right? They want things to be fair, because this isn't fair, so I want things to be fair. He already tried the win-win, because he came to the chef de partie and said, well, we have a problem. I'm handing over to her well, I want it to be handed over to me well. I'm looking for win-win. Chef de partie, poor leadership, just let it go. So now this chef is in a position. I can't get win-win, but I still want justice. Well, that means things are equal. So if I'm losing, you're losing. So what did he do? The day before he started his R&R, he took all his prep, threw it in the bin. Then the chef came in the next day, opened the fridges, nothing. We're talking like, probably to get ready for that section, it was 12 hours of prep. This is 1 hour before service start. They went into some kind of meltdown and just quit on the spot and stormed out. We never saw them again. First of all, we lose a chef. They lose because they quit their job. Now we, the team there, lose because we have to cover our section and their section, and we also lose because there's no prep. So now we're running around doubly hard. We didn't even do anything wrong. We're running around doubly hard just because the leadership team, that chef de partie, he didn't take care of the situation, didn't look after his section. We're running around trying to get the prep done before we open for service. Then when the chef came back, he got a written warning, he was spoken to, there was a lot of fallout from that, and then the chef de partie also got into a lot of trouble. Plus, the executive chef got grilled on by the owners of what is going on in that kitchen. Why are we getting reports like people are not ready for service, etc.? It was a lose-lose. It was 5 losers. Well, years later, I was in a similar situation. I was in charge, and I had 2 chefs that were doing basically the same thing. I won't get into the details, but they were basically doing the same thing. They didn't feel like the other one was looking out for them, so they were leaving their section down. I needed to take responsibility, and that's what it means as a leader, is that no excuses are acceptable. So I needed to take responsibility for what they were doing, and this is what I did. It's not perfect, but it was a better outcome than the one I just explained. I came to both of them individually one-on-one, and I basically had the same conversation with both of them. What I said was, the situation has to stop. Now, I understand why you feel the way you do, and I understand why you're upset. If it was happening to me, I'd be angry as well. But let's just be honest, you haven't been innocent in this whole thing either. So, but I will tell you who has been innocent. The people who have had to cover for that section being down, who are working on other sections, have had nothing to do with this, and yet they're the ones who have been asked to jump in and cover it because of what's going on between you two. So we need to get past this. Is that a fair thing to say? Because I understand where you're coming from, and if I was in your position, I'd be thinking exactly the same as you. But you could admit, if I was in your position and you were in my position, you'd probably be having this conversation with me as well, right? And the reason why that's important to do to staff is that they feel understood, is because it's fair. Like, they didn't start behaving like this out of the blue or for nothing. They did it because they both felt there was an injustice going on. They wanted fairness. That's a valid thing to request. I'm not going to go into who's right or wrong, but their request was valid, so at least allow them to feel understood, because they couldn't have let go of that unless I validated their feelings. I said, look, there's got to be a better way, but I do understand. I probably would have done the same as you in your position. then after I got them to both be like, yeah, okay, we shouldn't be getting, this should not be falling onto other team members to fix, and this shouldn't be coming to you either to fix. I said, okay, so this is what I did. I made people accountable, and this is what I've learned. There are very, very few people who are bad. Honestly, that's my experience of life. But people will have bad behavior if they're not made accountable. I've often noticed that people who are spoken of as if they're a bad human being, if you actually just make them accountable for their actions, it is amazing how quickly their behavior improves. Just being held accountable, which means that they're not actually a bad person, but there has to be real life consequences for actions, obviously. So just make people accountable. So what I did was, I jumped into the section, I filled it up, and then I took photos of my work, of how it should be left. So you can, when you go to the section, you can see the section, you can see the photo, and you can be like, is it like that or is it not like that? And then I made up an A4 prep list checklist, put it in the service area, and I say, right, you have to go through this section, the list before, and before going out, you have to speak to the supervising chef and make sure they verify you have left it as we have agreed on. This isn't going to be a forever thing, but until we are sure that we're back on track, we're going to go through this until we've got confidence that it is. You're not being babysat, but we're going to just ensure that this becomes habitual before we move on. Well, the outcome of it was this. All of a sudden, overnight, the section was handed over correctly, because there was if you didn't, there would be serious consequences. You're having a conversation with me. And then also, but then when it was handed over correctly, the first thing I did is I heaped praise and encouragement on the person for doing it, for being a big enough person to get over their personal feelings, for putting the team first. Again, I congratulated them on embodying the values that we agreed on to move us, towards that vision that we have. You might be listening to me right now and seeing holes in my story and how I could have done it better. If you can, great. I hope you can take my experience and look at it and improve upon it. That would be my wish. The next thing I want to talk about is that if you do have to make changes, make a decision. The reality is, whatever big change is happening in the organization, we have to acknowledge that that's opportunity for growth. We know that every time there's a recession, there's a group of people that lose a lot of money, but there's also a group of people that make a lot of money. So any kind of change or any kind of decisions, they're never bad. It's only how you react to it. It's either going to be positive for you or not. It's how you react to the situation. And as a leader, it's important to put that into the staff's mind. This decision, whatever it is not inherently bad, but how you react to it is going to determine your outcome. And so I've noticed this, that whenever a big change happens, most people break down into a group that's either like 90-10 or 80-20%, that the bigger part of the group are scared, they're in fear, and a smaller part of the group are excited. What's the difference? Simple. There's a question they're asking themselves. The people who are scared are asking themselves something along the lines of, what am I going to lose? The people who are excited are asking themselves, what am I going to gain? And it's the same situation, but a very different outcome based on the kind of question you're going to ask yourself. And one of the things that you need to do as a leader is you can't make people think anything. But what you can do is you can ask them questions that allow them to answer it. And the quality of the question is going to determine the quality of the answer. Just like that example I gave you, if you've got everyone in your organization focused on what they might gain from the situation, what growth is there, what opportunities are there going to be, you would not have the same feeling of dread if something was going to happen major within the organization. And again, that's your job as a leader, and it sets the standard for everything. So just to recap, I'm going to say this: no one has all the answers. Go speak to your team. Rely on their expertise. No one respects anyone who can't make decisions, the leaders. Again, once you've got all the facts, make your decision, but be steadfast and make your decision, and make adjustments slowly over time, micro changes if needed. Be transparent with your team about decisions, and always put the motives and the vision and the values first. And make sure that you only have people in the team that are 100% behind the decision. Do everything you can to bring everyone around to it. Maybe not everyone will come around at the beginning, so you might need to put some more work into people. But if you're sure there's someone who's just dug their heels in and they choose to die on that die on that hill, then you've got to cut them loose. You've got to let them go. It really does kill a team to have someone on from the inside sabotaging it. As the old African proverb says, if we have no enemy within, the enemy outside can do us no harm. Don't blindly believe anything that I'm saying here. This has been over decades of work for me. I know what works. It's my story, but try it out and see what works for you. Question everything. And again, this is not some compendium of facts and figures and amazing strategies. This is just my story of what has worked for me in real time and what hasn't worked for me. And I want to pass it on to you. And so that's it. So all I'll say in closing is, you go get it.